Hey, we're live. Welcome, everybody. I don't know how I get that bar off, but let's see here. Okay, whatever. Make sure I got. Okay, welcome. Hi, how are we all doing?
Thank you. Everything great?
Good. Oh, the chef. Okay, cool. So, where are we holding? This is our second or third class. Third class. We did one introduction, and this is the next class in the series. We held off a little bit. We started talking about, just to recap a little bit where we are. We're in the first chapter of Sefer Yetzirah, and we're talking about the 32 mystical paths of wisdom that God used to create the world, and how these 32 paths are connected to the 32 times God's name Elohim is used in Bereshis that are discussing creation, how God created the world. So again, just as a recap, the number 32 is connected to the 22 Hebrew letters, and the 10 numbers, the 10 basic numbers of building blocks of creation, which are the 10 spheroids. And we spoke a little bit how about each one of these has a different representation, and that there is basically what we call three mothers, which are the head letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shin, 7 doubles, which are the numbers that have dual receiving and giving, and the 12 elementals or diagonals, which make up the basic outer structure of the entire universe. Okay, so let's hop back inside where we're at. Okay. The Kabbalists note that the 32 paths of wisdom have their parallel in the human nervous system. Gets it even more interesting. 31 of these paths parallel the 31 nerves that come from the spinal cord. There's 31 main nerves that come out of your spinal cord. And the 32nd is the entire complex of cranial nerves, which are 12 in number at the base of your brain. So every single thing that is done in creation is represented inside of us. It's crazy. Like the whole process of creation, how Seder Hishtalshalut, how God brought something from nothing, and all the chain, how the energy came down. Everything that happens above happens below. We're the microcosm of the macrocosm of the universe. So as we know, the 613 mitzvot are connected to the 248 positive mitzvot, which are the main bones or organs in our body, and the 365 negative mitzvot are the 365 connecting tissues. So every little thing that, I didn't learn, but you girls probably learned in a seminary growing up, and they teach you all these things in the Torah, and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But we don't realize how everything's connected to us, and all this energy manifests itself inside of us. So these 32 paths of wisdom that God used to create, all of creation, are connected to, as we said a second ago, all of the 31 nerves that come out of your spinal cord, and then the base of all the nerves which are in your cranium in the back of your brain. So all these paths of wisdom actually connect to your nervous system that's spread out, into your entire body. So the nervous system serves as a dual purpose. First, it transmits messages from the brain to all the parts of the body, which allows the mind to control the limbs and the organs. Second, the nervous system transmits information from the various senses to the brain. 4 of the senses, sight, hearing, taste, and smell, come directly through the cranial nerves, which are in the brain. The impulses that come from the lower 31 nerves deal primarily with the sense of touch and feeling. So let me just say that again briefly. Out of these 32 paths, 31 of them are connected to the 31 main nerves that come out from the spinal cord. And the 32nd is connected to the back of the brain, which is, we say, the cranial complex system. And out of those paths, the 31 are connected with sense of touch or feeling. And the main base one that has 12 inside of it are the other senses: sight, smell, hear, and taste. Yeah. So all of our senses. This is how our brain operates. It's happening so fast we don't realize it. We're not aware of what's going on. But, like right now I say, okay, I'm not saying to my brain, okay, move your arm and get a drink of water. I'm just reaching my arm, getting a drink of water. But in a millisecond, what's happening is the second that enters in a split thought that you're going to grab, your brain's already sending messages to your nervous system that allow the energy for your arm to move. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to move. God forbid someone who doesn't have use of one of their limbs or can't feel, their brain's like, trying to shoot those neurons, but nothing's happening because it's disconnected. So all this energy that's flowing happens so quickly we don't think about it. But it's an automatic process. But all of these energies connect back to the same number 32, which God used to create the universe. So it says like this. Like the nerves, each one of these 32 paths is a two-way street. The 32 mystical paths that the whole Sefer Yetzirah is based on, and all of creation is based on. So there are 32 paths of wisdom, of Chokhmah, and it says God created everything with Chokhmah. Everything in creation comes from God's wisdom, meaning his thought process, if you will. God is not like us. He doesn't have a brain. He doesn't actually think, but it's our way of relating to him. So every single thing that God created and creates every single second came from what he says God's wisdom. It arose in his infinite wisdom that we should have 10 fingers and 10 toes and 2 eyes and 2. I mean, we could have had 10 eyes. I don't know. This is exactly how God wanted everything to be in us and all of the universe. And that all comes from Chokhmah, from wisdom. Just like anything that we want to do in our life starts with a thought. That's how reality comes into existence. Any building that's ever been built, any idea that's ever come up, anything that's happened in this entire world from humans, from inventors, starts with a thought. I have an idea, right? Everyone has ideas. But to turn an idea into a reality it's a process, right? So I deal with guys all the time in the sense, I got this great idea. It's wonderful. Great. But what are you going to do with the idea? If it stays as an idea, it's absolutely nothing. But with God, it's different. God's ideas don't just stay up there where he's like, let me think about this. The second it arises to God's thought process, it's coming into creation. The question is how and when and how quickly. And highly functional people, they've interviewed some of these, multi-billionaires and people who are in the highest levels of their fields in all reality. They operate at what they like to call God speed. Obviously, they're not God, but they come up with ideas and they make it happen. They don't say, well, what if it doesn't work? And what if, people make fun of me? Or what if they're like infinite levels beyond that. It enters in someone's brain and they say, all right, let's do it. And they assemble teams of people and they spend millions of dollars and they research and they go and they do not stop. They don't think about failure. They don't think about what it does if it doesn't work. But their thoughts and their actions are in a state of flow. So these ideas, if you will, are like a channel. So these 32 paths are the two-way streets, right? So first is the channel for which the mind exerts control over creation. Second, it is also the path in which man can reach the mind. If an individual wishes to attain a mystical experience and approach the mind, he must travel along these 32 paths. So we'll get into this a little bit more, but all these 32 paths are connected to the tree, as we spoke about, the 10 Sefirot, this Sephirotic tree. And this is all the energy that happens in a split second when we're not even realizing it. Well, if we're conscious of it, the idea is how we can travel through these 32 paths, which exist to us, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and use this energy that God gives us every second for something positive, for something good. The reason we have death in the world, death is not a reality. We're not supposed to die. We're supposed to live forever, and we will when Mashiach comes. But the only reason we have temporary death right now is because there's evil in the world. And after the initial sin of the tree of knowledge, and evil got released into the world, God basically said, I have to allow for death, or evil will live forever just as well as good. We can't have that. So evil goes through its course and it dies, and eventually it will die out, and that's what's happening now, right before Mashiach. All the negative energy is coming out, and God's pulling all the garbage out, and it's all going to get flushed out and get removed, and it'll be gone forever, and we'll go on and live forever. So the idea is that this energy that we can tap into is an infinite energy. We spoke about that. In other words, we have infinite potential. The reason that we see certain people who are highly, highly successful and other people who are not, people who are struggling. It's all connected to here. It's all connected to our minds. Our minds literally control what's going on. And our unconscious mind drives our conscious mind. And we're not aware of this, but anyone who's dealt with trauma or healing trauma or things like this, the world exists in the way we perceive it. We could all sit down and watch, a movie or talk about something or see something, and all have a totally different response to what we saw because we're perceiving it through our own lens. So the idea of almost all self-help and improvements classes and books and everything are to bridge your conscious and your unconscious mind. So the thoughts that are traveling through your brain when you're not paying attention to are serving you instead of not serving you. And what happens through our lives when we experience negativity, when bad things happen, when challenges, however you want to frame them, they happen, and that negative energy gets stuck. And then what happens, it replays itself in a loop. And that loop keeps going all the time. So we're going through our life and we're doing things, and like maybe we have an idea, we want to try to do something, and the last time we did something, it didn't work out for whatever reason. And successful people say, okay, it didn't work out last time. How can I change it? And maybe this time make it a little better so it can work out. People who have not tapped into that mindset, that consciousness, right away, the voice says, oh, that's not going to work. Yeah, that's not going to work. Never mind. Why? It's not going to work. You're done. The second you start an action, if you don't have a set goal and you don't know exactly where it is you're going and you don't have a commitment and steps on how to get to the goal, it's not going to work. Because the forces of negativity, of energy, Yetzirah, however you want to call it, is always going to stand in your way. That's how God created the world. God doesn't make things easy. He doesn't. I wish he did, but he doesn't. So whatever path we take, there's going to be resistance. That resistance may not come in the beginning. In the beginning, we may say, oh, wow, things are going really smooth. This is awesome. All of a sudden, boom, roadblock. That paths of energy have been blocked. What do I do now? If we don't have a firm commitment and we don't say, I'm not giving up, I'm going to make this work, I'm going to do it, whatever the case it may be. The second that obstacle comes, we turn around and go backwards and say, it wasn't for me, it was too hard, let me try something else. But it doesn't stop. So we try things and we quit them, we try things and we quit them, we try things and we quit them, because it gets harder. When you're climbing up a mountain, the climbing doesn't get easier. But if you want to get to the top, you have to, you got to buckle down and say, I'm making it to the top of the peak. I may fall down, I may scuff my knee a little bit, there may be a wind, it may be harder, but I'm not going to stop till I get there. Otherwise, what happens is we just spend our whole life in this kind of retreat mode. So the idea is that we want to travel along these 32 paths. And this is the 32 paths, the energy that we'll speak about in a minute, that God has carved out for each one of us.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
It might be not so connected.
That's fine.
But you're saying everything comes from the brain, right? So what's when it says the brain controls the heart? Is that thoughts and emotions, but emotions also come from the brain?
Yeah, good question.
And they're I'm just curious.
Yeah. So there's I'm trying to reframe the question. Someone asked me, they were watching the class, and they said, please repeat the question for those who can't hear the question. So say it again, then I'll say it out loud. The head's supposed to control the heart.
Right. But you're saying everything, thoughts, emotions, feelings, everything's from the brain, right? Nothing comes from the heart. So
no, it's from the heart as well. They interact together.
Okay. So
there's a dual reaction going on. Sometimes the energy starts from the heart, and then the way it's supposed to work in a proper system, and that's what separates man from animal. As an animal walks on all fours, right? I mean, the head and the heart are on the equal plane. A human being, our head is above our heart. We're standing up, our head is above. The way it's supposed to work is we're supposed to use our brain to figure out what is good, what is not good, and then the things that we're able to say, all right, this is something that's good for me, to be excited about it, and have the heart get excited about it, and the emotions come along, and you have this kind of partnership between the head and the heart where you're engaged in both dimensions. What happens is when our brains are not in tune to what's right or wrong, or what's good or what's bad, our heart gets aroused first, And it could be from anything. It could be food. Like, let me get food's a very simple example, right? Well, that my wife and I went out to eat last night, and I ate too much, and I knew I was eating too much, but the heart took over the brain because it was sushi and it looked really good, and it's like, it's just one more piece, it's rice and fish. What's the big deal? But another one and another one, another one, and then I disappeared into the toilet for a while. And I don't need to tell you that. I didn't know.
Hours.
About hours. I'll tell you the rest of it.
10 minutes.
The waiter came out. He's like, "You okay? Is everything right? The food?" I'm like, "Everything was great." So
Right to the toilet.
yeah, the point is that sometimes our heart, our emotions, our excitement takes over for the brain, and we do things, and afterwards we're like, "I shouldn't have ate that," or "I shouldn't have said that," or "I shouldn't have done that," or "I shouldn't have," because that's what happens when our emotions get too ahead of our hearts.
So emotions come from the heart, not from the brain.
Mm-hmm. Right, the emotions
right.
do come from it. Right. The way it works according to Kabbalah is that the energy of Chokhmah, which is the seed that we're talking about, of the pure energy, connects to Bina, which is the heart, and together they produce the emotions or the offspring. So it's really both together, but the idea is that the energy from the brain is supposed to go into the heart, and then they work together, instead of the opposite of the heart telling the brain, I want that, right? Like, we've all made irrational decisions in our life because we want it. I don't care, I want it. I don't want, we spent money on something we should not have spent money on. And afterwards the bill comes, and we're like, did I really need that? But I wanted it, right?
I don't understand. So critic thoughts are coming from the brain also?
Mm-hmm.
Critic thoughts.
Sure.
So it's not from the heart. So how do you listen to the brain if you're getting these critic thoughts that are not so good, that making you to go down?
I'm not following the question.
When I have the voice, it's not going to work. It's not going to
Yeah, it's from your brain.
It's coming from the brain.
It's coming from the brain.
But it came from the heart?
So it gets a little complicated to actually trace the root. They said in that book, Letting Go, by Dr. I forgot his name. He spoke about how that in a daily basis, you could have thousands of thoughts, tens of thousands of thoughts floating through your unconscious mind, right? We're like, we're daydreaming, right? We're sitting there and you're talking to someone like, hello, what, like, because we're there physically, but mentally we're not there. When another, so he showed that out of the thousands of thoughts that go through your brain unconsciously, if you trace them back to their roots, they come from 2 or 3 emotions that have been triggered throughout the day. So I don't know if you've read The Body Keeps the Score by Basil Vanderkolk, but amazing book, I highly recommend it. A doctor who has a big trauma center, the biggest in the world, and he started healing people just by healing their trauma from all their medical conditions. And one of the ideas is that the body maintains the traumatic experiences inside. So it's not so much a thought process at that point in time. It's a process of, let's take it back to the example we said before. So you're a kid, or no, you're an adult, whatever. You go to do something. Let's start as a child. And you have a great idea, right? The person who started Federal Express, you've heard of FedEx? Like that was a high school or college, I don't recall, a project where they had to do a project to come up with an invention. And the guy who came up with that invention failed. He got an F. His teacher said, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. You're going to spend, you know what it's going to cost to send a letter, a piece of paper to another end of the world? You're going to have jets and it's going to cost millions. You're crazy. Who's going to use it? He could have said, wow, you're right. I'm a moron. The guy's a multi-billionaire today. Federal Express, we can't imagine life without it, like when you have to send something quickly. Because he didn't allow that teacher to shut him down. But it happens all the time. Another person will come around, and this, we're all made up differently. We all have different capacities of how we can deal with stress, with trauma, whatever the case may be. Some it's more difficult, but someone else comes along and, Mom, Dad, I have this great idea, or look what I made. And oh, that's stupid. That's not going to work. Ding. So the brain says it's stupid, but more importantly, the heart gets imprinted with a, ow, that was painful, especially if it's someone that's near and dear to you, primary caretaker, a close friend, a teacher, whoever the case may be. And then what happens is, years later, whatever it could be, you have an idea, you're going to do something, and your thought pops in your brain, oh, that's not going to work, it's stupid. But where did that come from? That originated from that traumatic experience that indented into your heart, that entered your body. So what happens is it all gets enmeshed together at some point in time, and it's hard to trace back. Well, did it originate in the heart and the brain? But our purpose and our goal is to try to create this sense of flow and to restore the energy balance, so we can get beyond those obstacles and return to the way it's meant to be, which is pure energy coming in from the head. That energy enters into the heart to get excited if it's something to be excited about. And then that excitement drives you to want to succeed in a goal or whatever the case may be. Those goals have to make it into writing. They have to have steps on how to get there. And they have to have support systems around, coaching, whatever the case may be, people who could keep you on track for when you go off the path, because we all do. It's very hard to stay on your goals unless you're a very driven person. Exercise, perfect example. When I first started lifting weights and doing exercise, and I'm talking about, I don't know, 35 years ago, the case maybe. At the beginning, it was awesome. I loved it. I got into it, and then it became hard. It became a burden. So I couldn't get up to go to the gym. You know, the afternoon came. I don't want to go to the gym. I want to watch TV. I want whatever. So I had to get a workout partner. A workout partner was someone that I had an accountability to. So we pushed each other. We knew at 5 o'clock, all right, we have to meet in the gym. So me and my workout partner, and I'm at the point now, I don't need that because it's part of my life. My alarm goes off at 6 o'clock. I'm there. I'm on my bike. I'm in the pool, whatever the case may be. It's part of my life. I don't say that in an egotistical way. It's just that I don't need that pushing anymore. My work. There was a time that was very hard for me to go to work. When I first started my own law firm, I slept in sometimes. I didn't go to the office as much, or whatever, because it was hard. I'm at a point in my life where it's routine. So it's not like I don't feel like going to work today. I don't ever feel like working, but I know I'm going to work. So we have to work with our own Yetzirahs, our own challenges and difficulties to get to the point where we're able to stay on point. But the goal really is, and one I have on my YouTube channel here, a list of 6 steps. We could do it one time in an abbreviated version. I created this whole system how to become successful in anything in life. And the main first part is to come up with a goal, and before you commit to that goal, to take the time and really think it through, talk to friends, see what it is, make sure it's something you want. But once you enter into what we call commitment stage, it's like, all right, this is like my husband or my wife. Like I'm married to this goal, and I'm not throwing it away. And I'm going to see it through to the end, no matter what it takes. And I'm going to put a time limit on the goal, because like milk, if you don't have an expiration date on milk, it's going to go bad, right? So you can't say, I'm going to do it. When? Tomorrow, next week, next year. Maybe. There has to be a time there, right? So you have to have a time limit to your goal. You have to have steps on how to get there. You have to have assistance from people around you to keep you on track. And you have to have the fortitude to know that it's going to go sideways at some point in time. Things never work out the way we want them to. But that doesn't mean that you can't get back on it and keep going. So going back into the text. So it says right now, in Hebrew, the number 32 is written as Lamed Beis. We spoke about this at the beginning of the class. Lamed Beis, 32, is gematria of Lamed is 30, Beis is 2, which spells Lev, which is the Hebrew word for the heart. It is in the heart that the action of the mind is manifest in the body. So the Chokhmah, which is interesting because Chokhmah, wisdom, is the brain, but it says 32 paths of wisdom, but the 32 is the heart. So how it works is the energy that starts, as we learn, from the base of our brain and goes to our nervous system. Then it goes into the heart, and the heart is responsible for taking that energy into the body to push us to do whatever it is our goal has to do. It says as soon as the influence of the mind ceases, the heart ceases to function, and this is the definition of death. When there's no more brain isn't working, then the heart's not getting anything from the brain and everything shuts down. So death can mean physical death, God forbid, and it could also mean death inside of us. When we get to a point where we stop thinking about what we want out of our life, goals, positive things we want to strive towards, we enter into a miniature state of death. Meaning, it's not saying I'm saying this outwardly, meaning we're alive and we're breathing, we're living, but we're not really alive. There's no energy going through us, right? People who are highly functional people, they got a lot of energy. We spoke about it a little bit in last class. Like, there's an old saying: if you want something done, ask a busy person. Because if you ask someone who's not busy, they'll have every excuse in the world why they can't, because they're in a state of laziness. When you're not moving, we're not in movement. The tiniest little thing, hey, could you call this person? Oh, I gotta go pick up the phone. It's like every little bit of energy.
But it's not laziness.
What is that?
I think it's more sadness. It's like when the earth's taking you down.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
But it's not laziness.
Listen.
It's not laziness. Laziness, it's a little bit excuse for something that is deeper, that's coming from something else.
You could term it however you want to do it. It's coming
but
from.
I want to be gentle because I feel like you're showing the success, and I feel from the other side, the one that is slowly coming back to life. When you're saying laziness, it's taking me down.
Right.
It's not me.
Okay, you can frame it however you want to frame it. I'm trying.
Be gentle.
It's not with you.
I know, but
I'm just trying to put in a framework of
I
here's where we want to be. We're going to work on how to get there, but just to be clear. So we could discuss laziness all day long. It's in the the Zohar talks about this is the element of earth, of your soul, that pulls you down. So it's all connected to this point. Laziness is something that gets developed over time for a lack of motivation, from a lack of wanting, and then that will lead to what we call as laziness, because when you don't have energy, we don't have a desire to succeed in anything, the heart's not getting the message from the brain, and the body starts slowing down. When the body starts slowing down, we become heavy. I don't mean physically heavy, I mean our being is heavy. You could be skinny like this and be a heavy person, you know what I'm talking? Everything's heavy. That's because this is like death. I'm sorry? Yeah.
Yeah. What you were talking about, like someone who's on life support or brain dead,
Yeah.
is that an argument against them being fully alive?
It's a very interesting question. And I was talking to a rabbi the other day. There's a huge halach debate, according to Jewish law. If someone is brain dead, if you're allowed to pull the plug on them, or you have to keep them alive, because we're not allowed to kill someone. Like you like this. What do they call mercy killings? Like these doctors was Kevorkian, this doctor who would like kill people like because people had horrible diseases, life-threatening diseases. According to Judaism, you could never do that. But from medical, there was a case not long ago. Shemishmor, someone's son drowned. It was a very famous case here in Aventura. And he was on life support, and his brain was not functioning at all, but he was alive because his heart was still pumping, but no energy was coming from his brain. So he's alive, but is he alive or is he dead? And I was talking to a rabbi because they didn't know what to do. He said it's a huge, complicated issue. There are rabbanim who say this person's dead. Okay, they're physically they're living, but others say no, his heart's beating, still alive. So it's not so clear. It's not so clear at that point in time what is considered life, what is considered death.
How would the heart still be working if their brains?
Yeah, that's another interesting medical phenomenon, because it's the opposite. It doesn't work. If your heart stops working, you're game over.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what's going on with your brain. Heart stops everything. But based on what we just said, if there's no energy coming from the brain, how are you still alive? So I don't know medically the answer to that question. I would venture to say that there still is energy that's tracking through in some peripheral kind of makif way, but it's not enough energy that it's going to keep things so you're functional, but that keeps you minimal baseline of alive, I would guess. So yeah. Okay. The heart also provides life force to the brain and nervous system. When the heart stops pumping, the nervous system can no longer function, and the mind no longer exerts influence on the body. The heart, therefore, serves as a link between the mind and the body, because it works both ways. The energy comes into the heart, and just going back again to Kabbalah, it says that Chokhmah and Bina never separate. If you look at the Hebrew letters in the alphabet, right? You have an Aleph, and then you have a Beit, and you have a Vet, right? So the Hebrew letter Beit is shaped like this, and inside the Beit there's a dot. That's what changes from a bit to a bit, right? Bet to va. That dot is the aleph, which is chokhmah. So that's the energy that's impregnating the womb of Bina that stays together. So ultimately what happens is that the heart and the mind, when they're working in a proper relationship, there's flow. It's the energy's going into the heart, it's going back into the brain. There's joy, there's excitement, there's life. Things are moving in their proper function. When one of them is off, and let's just look in a relationship, you look at any children that have any type of challenges or difficulties, and there's a 99% chance it came from their parents. Because I'm just talking about simple Kabbalah, like Chokmah and Bina, this is the head and the heart, this is the mother and father. They come together, and the energy that emits out of them when the woman becomes pregnant gives birth to the child. That child is a direct result of the energy that came from the mother and father. If the mother and father's thoughts were impure when they had relations, if they were, God forbid, cheating on one another, if there was anger, if someone was drunk, a million filling in the blanks, that energy goes into that child, and that child's now entering to the world. It's a fresh slate, but with all that energy, good and maybe not so good, coming from our mother and father, challenging into us. So the according to Kabbalah, like, and my wife and I can attest to this, we've had issues, me with my daughter, my wife with my son. And when our relationship started getting better, the relationship with our kids automatically fixed itself with no education. Nothing changed in how we related to our children. But when we started fixing our energy, amazing thing happened. Me and my daughter started coming like this. My wife and my son started coming like this. We literally saw it happen in front of our eyes. How do you explain that? That's just our energy, and it automatically affects them. So the energy that flows again to our bodies is impacted from the energy that comes from the brain and goes into the heart. So when in milliseconds, when God is funneling this energy into our brain every single second, and everyone has their own relationship with God. You can hate him, you may not want anything to do with him, however you want to do it, it's not my business, I don't care. But no one can argue the fact that we're alive because God wills us to be alive. And if God didn't will us to be alive, we wouldn't be here. And the fact that we're talking is because God is giving me energy right now to be able to speak. And if God forbid he didn't want that to happen anymore, I would just fall on the floor and there would be no more share tonight. Because that energy is our life. So the goal is that seed, just like the male seed that impregnates the woman, that seed that originally comes from God that enters into our chokhmah, how do we take that energy and use it in a positive way? God doesn't wrestle with us. He says, listen, you want to do whatever you want. You don't want me in your life, I'll live your life. You don't want to eat kosher, don't eat kosher. I'm not forcing you to do anything. Do whatever you want. And then we kind of do what we want. And sometimes it works out, sometimes not so good, whatever the case may be. But ultimately, what we really want is we want to be the best us that we can be, right? And to do that, we have to make the best use of the energy that's coming to us. And then energy is in a state of flow all day long. And there's only so much. Kabbalah is really the root of Kabbalah is from Orot and Kelim. Everything in the creation, it's water, it's light in vessels, right? Just like water in a cup. Our body is the vessel. Time is a vessel. We have 24 hours in a day, right? 365 days a year. We have all this time allocated for us, every single one of us. You don't get time back. It's gone. You don't go back one day and be like, now I know what I want to do with it's gone. Whatever's gone is gone. So once that energy is gone, it's finished. The goal is when that energy is coming into us, how are we going to use it? And how are we going to use it first and foremost in our bodies, in our vessels? That's the main vessel, in our heart, in our head, in our body. And then also, how are we going to bring that energy into the world? And that's the time that we have allocated. What are we going to do with that time, right? Time is the most precious commodity we have. Money comes, money goes, friends come, friends go, good times, bad times, but time, you don't get it back. It's gone forever. And unfortunately, we don't realize it usually until it's much later on in our life where we look back and we're like, what did I do? Like, gone. 2 minutes, right? We all said, the new year starts. We have goals. We're great. We're going to do this. Another year goes by. Another year's go by. And we're like, it doesn't stop moving. It keeps going ahead. Okay. So the heart serves as a link between the mind and the body. It is therefore for this reason that the Sefer Yetzirah calls the heart the king over the soul. So we're going to talk a little bit later about how each one of the dimensions of our soul, there's time, there's space, there's physicality, there's different aspects of our body that are in charge of these different things. But the soul, it says, is the king over the soul is the heart. That the basis of our soul is the heart, even though the seat of the godly soul is in the brain. So it's interesting. We'll speak about that in a little bit. Okay, the Torah is seen as the heart of creation. The first letter of the Torah, we spoke about this last time, is Beit, which is Bereshis. And the last letter of the Torah is Lamed for Israel. I got ahead of myself because now we're learning inside. Together, these two letters spell out Lamed Beis, which means heart. The 32 paths are contained in the Torah, which is the means through which the mind is revealed. I'm sorry, 1 second. 32 paths are contained in the Torah, which is the means through which the mind is revealed. It is also the link between the mind and the physical universe. The Torah is therefore expounded in 32 different ways, as taught by Rabbi Yossi of Galilee. 32 different ways of interpreting the Torah. Again, the number 32. These two letters, Lamed and Beis, also share another unique distinction. As a prefix, Lamed means two in the Hebrew language. If you put a Lamed in front of something, it means two. And Beit means in. Right? Put a Beit before something, it means in. The three letters of the Tetragrammaton, Yud, He, and Vav, also can serve as suffixes and personal pronouns. Yud means mine, right? In the Hebrew language, you put a Yud, right? Shali, it's mine. He means her, and Vav means him, right? So the Yud and the He and the Vav of God's name also can refer to me, her, and him. In the entire alphabet, there are only two letters to which these suffixes can be joined. The Yud, the He, and the Vav. Did you know this?
No.
Out of the whole Hebrew alphabet, there's only two letters that Yud, He, and Vav, meaning mine, her, and him, attached to.
I don't know.
Lamed and Beis. There's no other letters that a Yud, a He, or a Vav connect to. It's pretty crazy because the Yud, He, and Vav, or God's name, Yud, He, Vav, and Lamed Beis is the 32 paths of the heart.
Wow.
Say any words?
There's no words, any other,
There's
no
no
other
letters.
letter. Anytime you see Yud, He, or Vav, meaning mine, his, or hers,
Language, you say?
Yep, the whole Hebrew language.
Wow, this is insane. I don't know.
only Lamed and Beit are the only two letters that connect to Yud, He, or Vav.
That's so crazy.
It is crazy if you think about it.
Oh, now I need to.
22 Hebrew letters, and the only ones that have Yud, He, Vav that connect to it, meaning his, her, or mine, are the same Lamed and Beit, which is the heart of everything. Again, we're just seeing how there's no coincidences, and beyond that, every
Sorry, I'm
little
not
thing is.
understanding.
I'm sorry.
Like at the end of the word, you're saying?
Yeah,
It's
right.
the only letters that in
the whole Hebrew
that
alphabet,
they're connected to.
Lamed and Beit,
That's a
meaning
that
li,
would-
la, or lo,
Okay.
or bi, ba, or bo. It doesn't mean that there can't, like, yeah, there's li.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
So
there's a
ani-
solid yud.
Ani,
Okay.
that's ani, that's the spell. The Yud and the He and the Vav can be in after different letters, but when they mean as a suffix, as like hers, her, or mine,
Okay,
to
I
change,
understand. Okay,
it can only be a Lamed or Beis.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it says the two letters Lamed and Beit are the only ones in the entire alphabet which combine with the letters of the divine name in this matter. The number 32, this is crazy, is the fifth power of 2. So 2 to the fifth power, meaning 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 5 times, comes to 32. As the Sefer Yetzirah explains, the 10 Sefirot define 5-dimensional space. The 32 paths correspond to the number of apexes on a 5-dimensional hypercube. So let me try to give you an example of what this means. So 5-dimensional space is like the Hebrew, the Luchot, where God, there's a picture in here somewhere, I just don't know where it is, right here, where God put the 10 commandments on. It wasn't a piece of paper like this. I mean, it wasn't thin, it was dimensional. So it had shape to it. And the letters were through the tablets floating. It was like a total miraculous type of thing.
And they were like the same, they were both sides, you look at it.
Yeah. See, it all comes back, right? So let me just do this inside, then we'll finish outside, and then we'll finish up for the night. So it says this is not as difficult as it may seem. A line, which is one dimension, has 2 apexes or 2 ends, right? So here's a line, just a straight line. So you have 2 points. You have the top point and the bottom point. This is called an apex. A square, having 2 dimensions, has 4 apexes or corners, right? You have a square, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. A cube, which has 3 dimensions, has 8 corners. We thus see with the addition of each dimension, the number of apexes or corners is doubled. So a 4-dimensional hypercube has 16, or 2 times 4, 2 to the 4th power, while a 5-dimensional hypercube has 32, or 2 to the 5th power. It may sound a little confusing. We'll talk a little bit more about next time, but just to understand it in a different perspective. So the 5 dimensions of reality, like 3D you've heard of, right? Like 3D printing, all this. And then there's 4D. And now they're trying to move to a 5th dimension. So there's basically 5 dimensions of all of the universe. The first 3 are physical space. These are the main directions of the emotional spherot, which is north, south, east and west, and up and down. That defines physical space, right? So you have north, south, east, west, and up and down. That's physicality, as we know. Then you move to the 5th dimension, which is time. Time is a dimension. That's how we measure things, right? Seasons, years, minutes, hours, etc. And the 5th dimension is called soul, which is a dimension of beyond time and space, which is basically godly energy, if you will, and how that manifests down to us.
You know what it's giving? It's giving the 5 levels of the soul.
Correct. That's correct, 100%. That's exactly what it is. It's the 5 levels of the soul. Connect to these 5 realities. And the Yetzirah, the 5th reality, is beyond any comprehension. Interesting enough, you can see the more you unlock the secrets and the more we dig into these things, you can see parallels to all this in creation, to the reality. Right now, there's huge debates going on about 5G. A lot of people claiming that it's very bad energy. I don't know if you've ever read any of these things, that these cell towers that are now putting 5G, which is like hyperspeed energy, are emitting terrible radiation. It's very bad for the thing. Everything's now connected to this 5th dimension, because we're entering into this 5th dimension of Mashiach. It's the Yetzirah dimension. It's the dimension of soul, which is above time and space.
Do you think nowadays people are tapped into that part of their soul?
100%. 100%. And the energy is so intense, which is why there's such mass chaos in the world right now. It could be harnessed for good, or harnessed, God forbid, for the opposite.
Wait, but I thought the other, like the Yetzirah part was the animal soul. I thought the animal soul doesn't have a Yetzirah. That's what I heard. Is that true?
So it's in its root, only a Jewish soul has these 5 levels. A non-Jewish soul doesn't have these 5 levels. Right? There's no Yetzirah, there's no Chaya, there's no upper levels. But that 5th energy, it says actually in this week's parsha, we just passed in Parshas Bal, last week's parsha. So it says that Paro, and Moshe was afraid to go to Paro. God had to say, "Come, I'm going to go with you." It says Moshe Rabbeinu, he's afraid. First of all, Paro was 3 feet tall. I don't know if you know, there's a midrash that said he was a minute. He was like 3 feet tall, but he had powers of tremendous black magic and negative energy, because he was connected to this 5th level of chaos, which is a very high godly chaotic energy. It doesn't mean that he's capable of like internalizing it, but it means that the source of that crazy energy in the world of tohu or chaos is now in the world. Our job is to put that energy into vessels, so then the forces of evil won't be able to use it. But if it's not put into proper vessels, they can utilize it. It's not inside of us where they can have that energy as a direct connection to God, but it can be used for, God forbid, very, very bad things. It's a power. It's an energy. So there we have it. We're going to talk a little bit more about these different paths, and just to end on this thought, what's very interesting, and we're going to learn, God willing, in next class, how these 32 paths of Chokhmah, of wisdom that God used to create the world, those were God's 32 energy paths, unique to the world, how God sees. Each one of our own 32 paths is not a general 32 paths. You have yours, I have mine. In other words, we each have our own map of our hearts, and we each have a different way that God has given us to connect to our heart, to Him, to ourselves, to others. So it's not like a universal energy we're trying to tap into. We're trying to tap into our own unique 32 levels of energy, and how we can use this energy for our own individual lives and to be successful in our own lives. Beautiful.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Any questions before we sign off for the evening? Cool. See everyone next week.
See you next week. Thank you.
So
Sure.
if
Pleasure.
we, wait, but if we